So do you not think it's quite funny that the last episode we've done was alcohol, and now I'm recording the intro to this episode, the most hungover mess of a person that you've ever seen?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised, having just been at an amazing festival. But the timing is good, yeah.
Yeah, I just got back from Transmit Festival, 3 days down in Glasgow, and it's fair to say that I am a broken human being. But I'm feeling a little bit more hopeful about things because we've just recorded the Clementine episode. Well, we haven't just recorded it, but we're doing the intros for it because it's now time to publish it.
It's Clementine.
It is Clementine. So yeah, Clementine Ford. And so we're not going to do a lot of talking because we're going to let Clementine do the talking.
Yeah, we don't want to cut into her precious time because she gives us so many pearls. This really is such an insightful and just really special episode. We are so grateful to Clementine. She's just so bloody interesting to listen to. She's so thoughtful. She's so intelligent. She's so funny. And I'm just going to stop fangirling, but actually I never will. And I can't believe that happened. So thank you, Clementine. Enjoy this amazing episode from the incredible feminist icon, Australian author, all-round legend, Clementine Ford.
Here it is.
ADHD as females, ADHD AF. ADHD as females, the podcast.
Hi, I'm Dawn.
Hi, I'm Laura, and we are ADHD AF. Seriously. We are two neurodivergent neighbours who moved to the same street at the same time, at the same age, with the same undiagnosed disability. What are the chances?
Since discovering the enormous impact ADHD has had on our lives and the horrifying numbers of missing undiagnosed females, it has become our mission to make some serious noise.
We want to use our voices to raise awareness, break the stigma, and share our experiences in the hope that they help others.
So join us for a chat, or as it's called up here in Aberdeen, a blether.
Trigger warning, we will be covering some really sensitive topics, so please do have a read of the description of each episode before listening.
It's important to note that we are not medical professionals, we're not therapists or coaches, we're not qualified to offer advice or support. What we will do is share our experiences alongside resources and information from professionals. We will talk over each other and we will go off topic and forget the point mid-sentence.
We are both assigned female at birth, which means that we can only speak from the experience of life as AFAB people. However, ADHD AF is an inclusive space. Whatever your gender, you are very welcome here.
Yes, you are.
ADHD as females, ADHD AF.
So thank you so much for joining us.
Oh my God, thank you for asking me. So nice of you.
Not at all. So we would like to find out all about your journey. We saw from your post on Instagram that you very recently posted that you had been diagnosed, and we don't know if that's something that you knew about before or not, but we'll dive straight in with some questions, hey?
Yeah.
So sure. Would you mind telling us your age, your occupation, obviously a little bit about your work history and anything you'd like to share in that realm?
Well, my name's Clementine. I'm 40. I'll be 41 in 2 weeks. Work history is makes a lot of sense now that I know why I have been incapable of any kind of regimented work. So I've mostly worked in either the creative or the service industries. So hospitality and writing, basically. Anything else that I've tried to do, I've usually failed at or been fired from.
Yeah, we can relate.
Yeah, we can absolutely relate to that.
And so how did you come to suspect you had ADHD?
So 10 years ago, a friend of mine was diagnosed and she said to me, I think you've got this. And I was like, I don't think that I have ADHD. And you know what? It wasn't even the stigma around it really, although look, maybe some of it was subconscious because there is still obviously a stigma.
Of course.
Yeah.
But I feel like I very much didn't understand what ADHD was.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge problem. And I also, now I'm realizing that one of the reasons I resisted the label was because I wanted to be, and this is in air quotes, I wanted to be quote unquote normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really did not feel normal. And my brain has never been normal. I've got OCD as well.
Right.
I've had that since that's been apparent since I was 12.
Yeah.
So I already felt very kind of like a big giant weirdo
Yeah.
anyway. And just, I know, look, I'm sure that your listeners will understand all this, but like a just blanket disclaimer that the words that I'm using, like weirdo, normal and stuff like that, obviously it's tongue in cheek and it is that kind of stigma that we place on ourselves, right?
Yeah.
We always say the word insane by accident and then have to go, oh, hopefully the listeners understand. It's the language that we use and it's not, there's no intent in there.
I quite often call myself crazy in a sort of reclaiming way, even pre this, obviously, because I have had such like intense mental health issues that, and also now I think, well, how much of that is anxiety? I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety when I was 21, and then my psych now has said, I don't think you have that. I think you've got some social anxiety, but I don't think you've got general. Like this was just another person who doctors met and were like, well, you're anxious, therefore you're mentally unwell, as opposed to maybe there's something neurological that's making you feel this way all the time. So anyway, so my friend said that to me about 10 years ago and I was like, no, I don't have that. And we really didn't, like it seemed even unusual to me because even 10 years ago, obviously, there was still way less of an understanding about women having it.
Definitely.
And then in the last year or so my hairdresser, it's an amazing woman who I've been seeing for like 10 years. My hairdresser was also diagnosed. It's that kind of thing, like when you're diagnosed, you're like, you see it in everyone, You're like, oh, wow. It's like the veil is lifted and maybe sometimes you misdiagnose people or whatever. But she said to me, I think she sort of very tentatively kind of broached it with me. And she was like, I think that have you ever thought about,
considered.
Yeah. And then talking to her more about her experience with it. And, she's a creative person as well. Everyone I know who has it, which is not to say that people who you have to be creative of. Wow, such a humble brag. It's just every creative person. You're also creative. But she is obviously like a kind of a lateral thinker in many ways. And she said to me, I think that you should look into this, which kind of, again, planted the seed or watered the seed that had been planted 10 years earlier. And then most recently, the thing that really got me into kind of going, okay, I think I might have this, is that one of my best friends was going through the diagnosis process herself because, like so many mums of neurodivergent children, she was getting support and help for her neurodivergent child and going, oh, this is me.
Connecting the dots,
We hear about that a lot.
And so then when she was explaining to me what was like resonant for her, I was like, I think that's me too. And so that was kind of all probably about, that's all happened over the last year or so, but the diagnosis process when I was really like, I think that this is me, probably started about 6 months ago. And then it was just the confirmation that I received where I'd already, like I'm sure so many of us, I'd already kind of accepted that I had it is the wrong way of putting it, because I feel like saying accepted means that there's still resistance. And I actually feel like quite proud of it now.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Well, I think we'll probably get into that, but I'd already assumed the diagnosis for myself. And the psych, the official formal diagnosis felt to me more just like a formality. But I guess I was probably still scared because people, particularly women, have terrible experiences with psychs and was nervous about what it would mean for someone to say, no, because it felt so strong, so true for me.
Yeah.
But also, if it wasn't that, then why is my brain like this?
Yes.
You know?
Yes, absolutely. So so obviously you're in Australia, so how, we don't really know that much about the diagnosis process. Like what is your experience? What has that been for you?
Look, I'll preface it by saying that I come from a pretty huge place of privilege with this, because I do have a profile here.
Yeah.
And I think that just opens doors in a way that is so unfair. It's not that you can like necessarily just call up a psych office and say like, well, put me on the list before all these other people.
Yes.
But it's more that I have access to a much bigger range of people who have connections. Ultimately, what happened was I have a subscriber only sort of level that I run through my Instagram page. And one of the people who is part of that community works for a psych who specializes in ADHD.
Right.
So she contacted me and she said, I can get you in to see the psych here. It was still a 2-month wait, but it was 2 months as opposed to like maybe 8 or 9 months. And I sort of feel, it's really important to me that like I make it clear that I know that that's really unfair.
Yeah.
It doesn't make, I don't know, it's a weird thing because like, wow, she acknowledges it's unfair, but like, did she not take the appointment? No, I took the appointment, because I wanted to help myself.
You do need support,
exactly.
And that's what needs to happen. It's so unfair. It's so unfair.
It's really
fun. It doesn't work across the board wherever you are in the world. We know that people are going to have privileges above other people. Us ourselves, we're in quite a strange situation because I was lucky to be able to access private healthcare because of my partner's job.
And I'm a poor student at the moment who is on the waiting list, and I have been since last May. So the only reason I got a diagnosis of sorts is through my university. I managed to get in touch with the people there, see an educational psychologist, and they were able to, validate my thoughts and feelings with ADHD. And so now I'm just in limbo because I can't get any medical help. So
it's an undisclosed amount of time. No idea.
Yeah. It's really wild because I wonder, is it, and I actually just don't know, is it as difficult for older men to get the diagnosis as well as women? I mean, even when you take away the kind of the expectation, well, the difference is the different ways that it kind of manifests in women because we have been conditioned in such, stereotypically gendered ways, but like just structurally. I mean, when I went to my doctor to start that, so basically like the basic process here is that you go to your GP and get a referral.
To
the site. So you have to go through the whole kind of like conversation with you. You have to convince your GP, which can be a hurdle for lots of women already, particularly when the GP is like, well, no, you're a capable person, or you can't possibly have ADHD because you have, you're able to run a business or something like that, which my GP was actually quite supportive, but like people are met with that, but it's like, because women have been trained, they can run the business, but they're fucking exhausted all the time because they're doing something that their brain is not like really equipped to do,
like
without
constantly walking upstream against a current.
So you go to the GP, you have the appointment with them, they write the referral to you, and then you have to find a psych who is taking ADHD consults, which not all of them are doing. And a lot of them, my doctor recommended 3 people and then came back and said that none of them were doing ADHD consults anymore. And I think that the subtext there is that there's too many people seeking an ADHD diagnosis.
Yeah, because it's so trendy. Because we're just hopping.
Oh God, I hate that. Yeah, and so my doctor as well said that they were finding a huge upswing in the number of women who were seeking a diagnosis. After lockdown, and Melbourne had like one of the strictest lockdowns in the world for the longest period of time. And I think that gave a lot of women the opportunity to kind of, well, they couldn't sort of, there were no distractions that can normally kind of be used to mask things. And also we've just had an upswing in awareness about it, more and more people. Okay, so there is the pride factor of it. I do feel proud. I described it as being like you look at 40 years worth of photographs of your life in a huge tapestry, like millions of photographs, and you can't, like, you can zoom in on each of them individually and go, oh, that's me having like poor time management skills. That's me, never paying a parking fine. That's me being, in a state of depersonalization for 3 months. That's me sabotaging every relationship I've ever had because I don't want anyone to get too close to me, because then they'll see the real me and they won't like it. And you look at all of those photographs individually, and they're all so filled with shame and self-loathing. And then you zoom out, or like what part of like understanding to ADHD for me and the diagnosis is zooming out and seeing that it's actually all one giant picture. And it's kind of like a magic eye thing. And you're like, oh, all of these individual things actually make up this really beautiful person. Who's managed, in spite of like challenges, who's managed to achieve some really great things. And that's what I feel proud of. The most recent book I wrote is a memoir, and it's about love. And there's a lot of like self stuff in there, like communicating with your past versions. So I've done a lot of like self-work in terms of like actually manifesting myself as different ages. And I talk about carrying them around with me, like they are me, but they're not me. And I send them love and all that kind of stuff. So I feel really proud of that, of those like versions of myself who had the same struggles that I have now because of ADHD, but no capacity to understand it at all. You just woke up every day and like put one foot in front of the other, even though a lot of periods in your life, like when it gets really bad, it's really scary in your head. And so I think that that's all kind of wrapped up in the pride too. And then just thinking, well, I probably wouldn't give it away, because for all that makes it, the things in your life difficult, there is so much that's really beautiful about how that brain works.
Yeah, completely. That's so interesting. It's funny because we talk a lot about sort of the diagnosis roller coaster. Obviously, I'm going off piste. It's what happens. Sorry. But,
oh, me too. And that's another one of those ones where I'm like, oh, that's the ADHD. Oh, I always say to people whenever I'm doing podcasts or I'm on stage or whatever, people will ask me questions, and inevitably I end up answering the question that I want to answer.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's like there's a lot of talk about when you're diagnosed, there are these stages like the grief cycle, right? So people have said that you start with denial. I don't feel like I did start with denial. I think it was just relief, but they say arguably it's kind of the same thing because one leads to the other sort of thing. Do you feel like you are on this roller coaster, or do you, because you sound so like you're there at acceptance? I'm like, have you actually got there already? That's incredible.
Well, then that's now stoking all of my self-doubt, oh, they're going to think I'm lying.
Not at all.
I think that the denial thing is interesting because obviously when it first kind of was suggested to me 10 years ago, I was like, no, I don't have that. So definitely went through the denial. By the time I got the diagnosis, I was so certain that I had it, and so eager to kind of like see what treatment I was really excited at the prospect that like there could be help, because I had a few friends by that point who had ADHD who'd said to me things like the medication, which I've always been really kind of skittish about medication, not because I don't think it works, not because I think anyone else shouldn't use it, but because I've got such an addictive personality.
Yes.
And so when I think of medication, even though I know that it's not like it's medication, it's not like illicit party drugs, which are fun. But,
we wouldn't know.
I have this thing of like, well, if you take medication every day, that's something that it's like I fear being addicted to things, it's a thing I'm going to have to talk about with my psychologist, who, fortunately my psychiatrist is married to a woman who is a psychologist who specializes in OCD and ADHD. So it's kind of like a perfect
That's
match.
handy.
Yeah, it's something I'm going to talk about with her, because I think that it's that fear of like, I fear I just know that like I love substances, and it's not. I have to like reframe it in my mind. It's not a substance; it's medication. It helps you to
medicine
like,
for your brain.
Medicine.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I kind of was going back to the question. I didn't have any grief because I didn't have any of the grief that you kind of typically hear about, where you're like, if only someone had intervened, if only I'd known, things could have been different. And in part, I don't have that because I really feel like in my life, I have, whether or not I've just always felt this way or whether or not it's something that I've developed, I just don't see any point for me in dwelling on what could have been different.
Yeah.
Like my mum died when I was 25, which I think was a huge shaper in terms of how I think of things like that, because I think going through a grief like that so young, I mean, and 25 is actually really young to lose your mum.
Of course.
I sort of feel like it kind of, that process of grief over the last 15 years has led me to a place of acceptance that life is full of all these kinds of things, that like I don't want to get to 75 and have experienced none of like the lows of life.
Yeah.
Because then I don't know, it's like, and maybe as a writer as well, I'm very interested in exploring all of those different shades in the world and in your life. And so I kind of feel like, well, so what would have happened if someone had caught it early? What, like, would my life have been significantly different? Maybe, but maybe I wouldn't be a writer. Maybe I wouldn't be, wouldn't have the life that I have now. I wouldn't have my son, because everything is kind of a series of events that leads to another event, So I just feel like there's no point to me, for me, and I totally understand other people doing it, but I don't see any point in kind of feeling like angry about it.
It won't change anything.
Let that go. It doesn't change anything, so I've just let it go. The only thing I do feel is a little bit of sadness, I guess, that I spent so much time berating myself, which I'm sure you're both very familiar with. Everyone listening will be, that I spent years basically just telling myself how shit I was.
Yeah.
And I'm a bad friend. I'm bad at this. I can't do any jobs. I thought I was really selfish.
Yeah.
And I couldn't like focus on conversations. So I was like, well, obviously I'm a bad friend because I'm not able to, I'm just waiting for my turn to speak. Like all of those things that's what I feel sad about. And I don't feel sad for me. I feel, again, like that self stuff. I feel sad for that girl who was like, you didn't know.
Yeah.
Properly resonate with that.
Yeah.
So what do you think's changed for you since the diagnosis?
I think, and I'm curious to hear what both of you think about this for your own experiences too. I think that it's been extremely validating to feel like, to undo all of that self-talk that's been so harmful, and to like work at forgiving myself for saying it, and also really working hard to send some love to those past versions of me that felt all those things. It's been like a light has turned on. I've been like stumbling around this dark house for my entire life, feeling my way through it and going, I guess I just live in this really dark house and I bump into everything. Like figuratively and literally. And now this light has switched on, and actually I see that what I thought the house was is completely different. It's like all different colors. There's things in here that I didn't even know were in here. And that's really exciting. Like I feel that kind of, I'm going to have to be really careful about thinking about not blaming everything on, or not attributing everything to it, that I still have agency in the choices that I make. And so I can't actually be a bad friend and then say, oh, that's my ADHD, like I still have an agency in terms of like moral choices that I make. But it's been validating in that I go, oh, I literally can't change the fact that time is meaningless to me. I can't do anything about that now. So I just have to work at like figuring out systems to try and make time a little bit more visible to me. But so stuff like that has been helpful. And also I think that I'm still, my psychiatrist is in New South Wales and I'm in Melbourne, so he did like telehealth for it. And he doesn't have an e-script thing. He has to post the script to me. So I'm still waiting to get medication. But I'm really interested to see, like, the friends that I have, like my friend yesterday, I had lunch with, actually, funnily enough, the same one who 10 years ago was like, you've got this. And she said that for her, the medication is like, when she's not on it, she has, it's like her brain is her on a horse and cart, but she's got 40 wild horses that she's trying to wrangle to get to a destination, and she's wrangling all of them at once, and it's exhausting. But with the medication, it's like she's still going to the same place, but there's one horse. And
that's great. That's a great analogy.
Yeah. And I sort of thought, like, well, that will make a huge difference as well. It's not that like my life is going to tangibly change.
No.
As I said, I'm not going to suddenly be aware of time, but I think I'll be able to focus my thoughts much better, or I hope that medication will help with that. And it will just calm all of that noise down that's always existed in my brain. That's been really not just distracting, but really,
that's exactly
really
it. Like that's my experience on medication. It's just that, taking away so much of the noise. And what I've noticed is when you're on your period, it doesn't work so well. So we're gonna like actually find out some proper information about that before we start talking about it. But that's just my experience. So, for example, yesterday was the first time in a really long time that I've sort of felt like that, in inverted commas again. And I couldn't make even the most basic of decisions. That's how my ADHD would present, is I need reassurance all the time. Is this right? Is this right? Should I do this? Is that? And I was like that all day yesterday, and it was horrible. And I suddenly realized, I was like, this is what it used to be like before. This is what I used to feel like all the time. So it's very, very interesting, because on medication, obviously you start to realize, well, it starts to become normal.
Yeah.
So it's then suddenly to wake up and be like, oh no, this medication is working, because this used to be what I felt like every day, you know? So, I mean, it's interesting. And the medication thing is so interesting. You have to be on the right one. You have to, different things are going to work for different people. And some people don't want to be on it at all. So it's just.
And that's fair too,
Exactly.
Some people use it just for the days where they want extra focus, Exactly. I'm still not sure how that choice will pan out for me, but it's interesting you say about periods, because I was talking to a friend the other day who told me that she also has OCD, and that she developed it it sort of emerged when she was 14, when her period started, which I was like, oh, that's so funny, because mine emerged when I was 12, just after my period. And I wondered then if it was a sort of a hormonal link, which makes me, I'm 41, within the next 10 years, I'm going to start going through menopause.
Yeah.
And I'm really scared about that, because my mum, who I think also now, again, like my sister's being diagnosed too, I feel like she's definitely got it as well. And I think that my mum might have had it. But, instead of her getting a diagnosis, she just was labeled clinically depressed for most of her life. And I remember the menopause was fucking horrific for her. Yeah. And by proxy, horrific for us, because she was so it was just like living in a heightened state of agitation all the time. She was so angry. And I worry about that, because part of my ADHD is that I'm really, really prone to anger because of frustration.
Yeah.
And I can just flip. Like, as soon as I get that sensory overload, I just have like a tantrum breakdown.
Yeah.
And it is really worrying to me, because I've got a child and I don't want to be like that. And I love my mum, but I also remember how horrible it could be to be around her moods.
Yeah. It's very scary, isn't it? It is scary to think that way. Like, it's coming, and it's coming.
And you don't know how it's going to affect you.
And I don't feel any regret about my potential, because I think that I've managed to do pretty well.
Indeed.
And maybe without it, maybe I would have gone and like done really well at a job that, when I think about it now, sounds really boring. Maybe I would have been a really great lawyer or something like that. But I'm really happy with my career, but I do feel that grief for like my interpersonal relationships, that I've been, like I said, sort of sabotaged a bit, I guess. As soon as I sense that someone wants to get close to me, I just, I believe the young people call it get the ick these days. I'm just like, yuck, you like me, get away.
Yeah.
And I feel like now that's probably part of that is because I always felt like when I must have internalized like growing up that whenever I let my guard down around people and my weird side came out or my true weird self came out and I might make a joke that was too loud or I might like, I don't know, talk about like a special interest topic at them for 15 minutes straight and or just not be able to stop myself spitting facts at someone about something that's like they don't care about. That once you let people see that side of you, they'd be like, oh, you're a weirdo.
Yeah.
So you just don't let them get too close to you. And
I suppose there's also an element of like with constantly putting yourself down and thinking you're so shit, to have somebody see you in an amazing light subconsciously when you're in that mental state is a bit like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
I always think of the Groucho Marx principle, you know, that you don't want to belong to any club that would have you as a member.
Yes, yeah, exactly that. We wondered if you wanted to reflect anything or share anything with our listeners about ADHD and motherhood, because we don't have families of our own, so we can't speak for that experience. If there's anything you would like to share about that.
Sure. So I feel like you know, as I come to learn more about what all the different various ways that it kind of manifests in my life.
Yeah.
There's lots. I mean, you would have seen the list that I wrote. There's lots I can already say. And even when I posted that, I was like, oh, I can think of so many more things that I didn't even mention. I'm still kind of going through that process of observing things and going, I think that that's ADHD and not just me being a bad mother or whatever.
Yeah.
And then again, like coming back to that, you have to have honesty with yourself and say, well, sometimes also maybe I've just made a bad choice, and not blame everything on it. I feel like one of the things that makes it is most apparently hard is it's the pull on your attention in all different directions.
Yeah.
And the feedback loop you have of guilt, because you spend all this time and now I know there's a reason for it and hopefully medication will help to focus me and help me be present. But you spend all this time just berating yourself and thinking, why can't I be present with my child? And to a degree, motherhood is so demanding that not all ADHD or not, like you can't always be present at every moment of every day.
Of course.
Yeah.
But there are times when you feel, as you both would know, that physical churn in your head where you just can't actually focus your thoughts. And then you think, well, I'm not paying attention. There's probably an element of, well, you know, I have to really watch my temper because I can be quick to anger about stuff, which I don't want to be a scary, angry mum. Yeah. And it's risky for me to even admit that on a podcast because there's so many people who'd be like, see, she's abusing her child.
Not at all.
But I think that there's like just practical day-to-day stuff that I find so challenging. And one of them is the time blindness. My son started school this year and I have to get him to school at, you know, it starts at 9:00. Never on time. I'm never on time. And this is one of the things that is so like bizarre to me about ADHD, but also kind of fascinating that like you can look at your clock and you can go, right, in order to get him to school in the next 5 minutes, because school's just around the corner anyway, but in order to get him to school in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to need to, or in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to need to put my shoes on now and put my coat on now. And we need to walk out of the door in 2 minutes. Like that is the time frame.
Yeah.
And your brain registers it. But there's something that just goes, well, I'm just going to sit down on the couch and just check my phone for 2 minutes, which turns into like 10 minutes. Or I'm just going to like make a cup of tea, or just something that's actually, to someone who doesn't have ADHD, you'd explain it and they would be like, that is completely illogical behavior.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? Why can't you just be on time? Why can't you try harder? Why can't you make a list? And you're like, I can't explain to you why my brain tells me that even though I need to be in this place in 2 minutes, that I have no physical understanding. I have no like mental understanding of what that time frame means.
Yeah.
So I find that stuff really hard because I also grew up my mum for varying reasons. I think part of which was obviously that she was, undiagnosed with ADHD. I'm certain of it. She was very like dedicated to reading. She'd stay up all night reading and she'd sleep all day. And we were often left just at the school gate for hours, just waiting to be picked up. And you'd call her up and you'd say, Mum, you need to come and pick us up. And you could hear her sort of bleary on the phone. I mean, she would have had that exhaustion that some people with ADHD have too.
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah, I'm coming. And then she'd just go back to sleep. And I just sort of thought that was, I mean, obviously that also has a huge impact on how you see yourself. You don't even realize at the time that you start seeing yourself as someone who is like just not worth picking up from school.
Yeah.
But I don't really like blame her for it. I don't, also to some weird extent, it just became normal. I was like, well, I guess like some mums just don't pick their kids up. Right.
It's very, very interesting because I don't know about you, but I feel like for myself, she says, talking about herself again, sorry, but it's like my dad is definitely ADHD, undiagnosed, but definitely hands down, he knows it. But it's funny because I feel at this point, when I sort of look back at my life, I've spent a lot of my life thinking, oh God, trauma, and this was hard and this shaped me and blah, blah, blah. And it's almost as if like knowing that I have ADHD, knowing that he has ADHD, it's almost like I can put it all down because it's completely reframed. You almost can't take it personally anymore. You can't be angry. You can't be, it's just like, oh, that's what that was. Oh, I get that now. Yeah.
And that's been, that's a really good point. That's a really like healing way to think about things. That I have to have the same generosity for her, which I do, that I now have for myself. That's like, it's just harder for you than other people. And it's hard when you live in a world where it's like so much is regimented by time and by organization. And like, I can't read school notices because there's all that self-talk as well. Like, when people say things like, I can't do this, and prior to having a diagnosis where you understand why you can't do those things, people think you're just being lazy or you're being like dramatic, so dramatic. But now I just think like, no, there's actually a reason why when I look at a piece of paper with words on it, unless it's something I'm interested in.
Yes, and to be honest, then it's totally different.
I'm not interested in school notices. I can't like read it,
Yeah.
Or I can read it, but I can't absorb any. I'm always saying to the other parents, when school holidays, when oh, what do they have on? Oh, do they have an excursion? I just don't know any of this stuff. I have that thing where I'm like, right, well, you have a reason for why you find those things so difficult, but it's really important to me and the relationship that I have with my son that I try and find ADHD supportive workarounds so that doesn't become a problem as he goes through school, because it's really irrelevant at some point whether or not there is a reason why I'm like that. It will still make
the outcome. Yeah, that's so true. We've kind of covered what ADHD has cost you in terms of like personal relationships. Is there anything else that you feel that undiagnosed ADHD might have cost you?
I think it's probably the thing that seems most paramount to me is just decades of mental unrest.
Yeah.
And the actual mental health damage that comes from feeling that unrest and feeling just so much in your head all the time, and the anxiety that you get from the constant noise, and like the inability to really treat it, because you're not treating the ADHD, you're treating the anxiety. And people say things like, well, have you tried meditating? Yes. And it's very, very bad. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. But yeah, it's weird because it's like, I don't feel that, I know we've kind of covered this already, but just coming back to it, I really don't feel that sense of, I don't feel angry at anyone for like failing to see or whatever, because I also understand that I'm like part of a generation of women who were all kind of let down, not by individual parents, but let down by patriarchy.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
And we've all been failed by, whether or not you have ADHD or not, we've all been failed by patriarchy in one way or another. And many of us in significant, numerous ways.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, so I can only be angry at it in terms of the fact that I'm angry at patriarchy.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that like 30 years ago, anyone would have looked at, there just wasn't kind of a template to look at little girls like me. And also because I was quite, I was able to sufficiently kind of like coast through school. You know, I was bad at the subjects that I didn't care about. And I still have nightmares. I was telling my son about this the other day. I still have nightmares about having to like either sit my year 12 maths exam, or I find that I'm back in school having to like pass maths in order to graduate. And I'll be like a 42-year-old in school that has to pass maths.
Yeah.
But I did really well at subjects like English and drama and, you know, the ones where you could kind of like talk. Or and like
create. There's no right answer. It's you can't get it wrong.
Yeah.
It's like
your
exactly. Interpretation. Yeah.
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 Exactly. And so because I did well at school, I did get the like, you would do so much better if you applied yourself a bit more. But it was the difference. This is going to sound
that
like
a few times.
But it was like the difference between like if you applied yourself, then you wouldn't be failing. And if you applied yourself, then you'd be like top of the class.
Yeah.
You know? And I didn't care about being top of the class. And I was like, well, I'm whatever. So no one really pressed it too much. And I still, because I could coast through in that way, I kind of didn't ever think it was really that big a problem. And no one else was, I never got called words that other people have been like subjected to unfairly. And I mean, no one should ever call any kid, I know we don't use this word anymore, but I'm just going to use it as an example. No one should ever call any kid dumb.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people with ADHD were called those words because of their struggles in school. But I didn't have the experience of being called that. So it was kind of like, in that sense, like, who was going to spot it in me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, they just thought that I was an overly dramatic, sensitive, center of attention person who like interrupted all the time because I had to be the center of attention, which it still kind of like has an impact on who you are. But I feel so like bereft for all the people who, because they had words like dumb thrown at them or like disruptive or whatever it might be, they just learned really early on not to try. And they absorbed this idea about themselves that they weren't worth anything. Yeah. And I think that those people, I can completely understand that getting a diagnosis would like enrage them. I feel weird, like I'm very conscious of that. I don't want to come across as like someone who, I mean, everyone has like different levels of, how do I phrase this? It's like that thing of, you know, when you're kind of talking about how you experience this thing, but there's obviously you're steeped in layers of privilege about it. I don't want anyone listening who has had the opposite experience, who's been really marginalized because of their ADHD, to be listening to me and going, well, I'm getting nothing out of this because this person has had it easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't really know how to kind of like, basically I'm feeling like a lot of like preemptive insecurity about people being like, she's a fucking dickhead.
But I think there's awareness there, and you know that you're privileged and you're not taking the piss, you know?
We're all, you know, to acknowledge our own privilege. You haven't picked to be who you are or where you were born or the privileges that you've had. All you can do is acknowledge that. And the point is, what we are trying to do here is to explore so many different people's types of experience within ADHD, because there are more things that join us together than tear us apart, because here we are, you know, we're basically the same age. We've had very, very different lives, but every single person that we speak to And we hear from a lot of different people reach out to us, the people that we are interviewing, the things that we are sharing, like the things that are said, like there's so many things that you're saying and we like physically feel it, because it's the same experience. And it's important to understand how all people experience this thing that is effectively the same. It's the same experience, but it presents so differently in each one of us. There are no two people with ADHD whose ADHD is the same. And then it's fascinating to look at how people, for example, you know, we look at you and you are so incredibly successful. You're clearly very driven. And so what's interesting is when we're hearing from people like yourself is like, well, how does that present? Because a lot of people who have ADHD, Dawn, you are queen of this, they think they're the only person in the world that have it. They think that they're the person who's like, oh, you know, I'm the only person who's rubbish at this and I have to pretend at that and nobody should know. So it is so valuable. Like, thank you for doing this for us and for sharing your experience, because yes, it's fantastic that you acknowledge your privilege in it, but we acknowledge your struggle. And it's really, really important for people to hear that they are not alone in their struggle and we really are all in this together, you know?
Thank you. I think that what is important for people like me who do have access to a platform and to have particular privileges that make it easier for them to speak out on stuff and be heard about stuff is that I can, you know, hopefully by like being open about having ADHD, not only do you encourage a lot of other women to, or a lot of people, I should say, to kind of consider it in themselves, but also to sort of think that it doesn't matter if you have an illusion of success, you could don't let anyone say to you, well, you can't have it because you have a job and you like have this success in this particular area. But also like structurally, maybe what I can do is, I don't even know if I can do this, but there is the possibility that you can be like, well, I've got access to people who can create legislative difference to make it easier for people to get diagnosed, to make it so that it's not like a fucking $500 appointment. I don't know if I can do that, but I can at least try to do that, you know? I feel like there's all that. It's funny we were talking about the rejection thing before, or, you know, when you were saying that you're like me describing things, you could sort of like feel it physically. And it's that physical, it's one of those things, the rejection stuff, when you realize all your life, all that incredible sensitivity that you've had to people rejecting you. Like, I can kind of perform Clementine Ford in my job because that's just a performance. And, you know, there's always sort of like a sense of like something that you keep between you and the people, because, you know, they don't get to see your most intimate thoughts and feelings. That's what's scary, letting someone in, because they see your most intimate stuff and they might not like it. And then you feel that rejection is like a physical thing. Like every time this will be familiar to people, I'm sure, every time I go out and drink with my friends, because I am an addictive person and I drink a lot, and I don't think I ever really like, I mean, I drink to the point where I just need to go to sleep. You know, I don't like drink all night long. So hopefully I kind of force I don't do anything terrible. But I always wake up the next day and I like message my friends and I'm like, oh my God, was I so annoying last night? Did I do this? And no matter what they say, I'm always just like, I feel this physical wretchedness that like
the fear.
And I kind of always think, well, before I got diagnosed, I always used to call it like, it's the narcissism of like thinking you're the biggest piece of shit in the center of the universe. You know? But it does really feel like that. It's like you're so heightened to everyone looking at you and seeing who you really are, which you think is a big sack of crap.
When in actual fact, no one really cares.
They don't care. Another thing that I feel really has really benefited me in my work with ADHD, and that other people should like feel really proud of in themselves, is that very heightened justice sensitivity. So I like my whole career has been kind of built on writing about feminism and gender equality and patriarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I've been really served by having that sense of like justice, sensitivity, and also like the one-eyed kind of commitment to it. I was talking to a friend the other day who I have said, she sort of like works in very similar field to me and basically like does exactly the same stuff in a different country. And I said to her, I think you've got ADHD as well, because of course now I'm going to go around and like diagnose every single person I know.
We shouldn't, but we can't help ourselves.
We can't help it. It's my special interest topic now.
Exactly.
Anyway, I said to her, I think you've got ADHD, and she'd said that it was something that she had considered, you know, but like the more I talked to her about it, I think she's hopefully going through that process as well, where she's like, you know, she's the same age as me. And a lot is very resonant for her. But I said to her, I think that the reason that we have been able to do the work that we do, like people are always saying to me, how do you deal with the abuse online? Because I get, you know, I've had years and years of like horrific online trolling and abuse and like the most awful things sent to me in messages and stuff like that. And I had this moment with her where I was like, I think that the reason I'm so like that we're both so good at kind of brushing this off is not just because we've gotten used to it, but because we're so committed to the work.
Yeah.
We're like so convinced and convicted in our moral standing on it that we are right, that we are correct about this thing. And so therefore it doesn't matter if some guy sends me a message calling me, you know, a fat cunt who deserves to die, because I'm like, you're wrong and I'm right.
Yeah.
And sometimes that one-eyedness can be incorrect. Sometimes we are actually wrong about something, but we feel very convicted in it, at least.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the focus. And it sort of means that you can weather the backlash, because it's really kind of, it's never going to be as strong as the conviction that you feel in the about the injustices that you're talking about. Whereas if someone you like is like, oh, I don't want to hang out with you, you're like, it's as if you have plunged a knife into me and taken all of my insides out and replaced it with dirt.
Yeah.
You know? So you're so sensitive to like the way that people in your personal life think of you.
Yes.
And so hardened against. And I think that that's like a superpower.
Oh God, 100%. Yeah. It's so funny because that we are so at the start of the journey of putting ourselves out there. And it is scary. It is scary. And I feel like I'm sort of waiting for it. I'm a bit like, oh, is today the day that somebody like calls me a meth head, or do you know what I mean? I'm like waiting for it. And our whole stance is just kind of, we're just gonna block people that are to us.
Delete, block, ignore, continue doing what we're doing.
That kind of like that sense of rejection is very different, because I think that one of the things that has been present in my experience of ADHD, which may be familiar to other people, is extreme sensitivity to being called a liar. You know, like, and I think that extreme sensitivity comes from the fact that often we do lie. We lie about why we're late. We lie about why why we couldn't do the thing. We lie about where the project went, or whatever it might be. Like, we tell little lies because we lie about the fact that like, I can't come and meet you for a coffee because I've got an appointment somewhere else. So I'll just say that I'll come and meet you for a coffee and deal with it later, because I can't tell you no, because then you'll hate me.
Self-preservation.
So you do actually lie a lot on these things that are kind of fundamentally meaningless. But you don't lie about stuff that is like injustice or things that have happened to you. You don't lie about your experience of ADHD, as an example. And so when people say to you, well, you're just lying, or you're just making it up, or you're just doing it for attention, I feel that incredibly keenly, because particularly when it's been stuff like, oh, this thing happened. And it was, women get called liars all the time for reporting on things that have been done to them by men. But when you're called a liar about that stuff, you're like, I do not fucking lie about shit that matters. Yeah. You know? I lie about why I was late.
In your core, what's important, your values, you're not a liar. Yeah.
And it's almost like, I wonder how much of that is kind of like the neurodivergence that I couldn't lie about that stuff.
Yeah.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one more thing that I'll just add for anyone who's out there who feels less at peace with the diagnosis than I might sound like I do. I'm actually I feel really grateful for the diagnosis because it answers a lot of questions for me. I also feel a strong sense of community with other people with ADHD. Like it's
100%.
In that kind of way that you feel excited about like the new topic that you're like obsessed with. You know, I feel really excited to be a part of this group of people who get it. It's like, it's actually really exciting to think this brain that has felt to me so weirdly foreign my whole life, or like it's so different to everyone else, that actually, no, there's lots and lots of people who have a brain like mine. Yeah. And that's really cool to explore what that means and to talk to them and find like mirrored experiences so that you feel so much better about yourself and about the way that you are. Also, I think that people with, I'm generalizing, but I think that people with ADHD insofar as my experience have like enormous hearts. I think that we're very sensitive about the right things. And sometimes we are too sensitive about the rejection stuff, but like, that's not our fault. No. But we're very sensitive about stuff that I think matters. And we have like a huge capacity for kindness. And I think that's something to be really proud of as well. I feel like there's lots in what it means for you that, yes, it is important to acknowledge the struggles, and it's important to give yourself forgiveness for the times that you've been hard on yourself, but also to keep reminding yourself that like you have to treat yourself with love because this is not your fault. And there's, for all that I'm talking about the positives, there's things that like are going to be struggles for me for the rest of my life. That are going to be hard. And I've thought a lot about like, well, if I'm lucky enough to live to be 80, what does it feel like to be an 80-year-old with ADHD? Like that kind of scares me. Yeah. But I can't like just focus on that stuff. And I'm not inclined to anyway, because I feel, like I said, a lot of pride about who I am and a lot of pride about the community of other people. And I think that when you look at the contributions that people who are neurodivergent and who have ADHD specifically have made to the world, I think that there's so much in there to be like thrilled by. How incredible that we get to be part of this lineage of people that have made who have like brought to the world some of like the most beautiful art that we have, the music that we have, like, and not just art, not just poetry and writing and stuff like that, but lateral thinking. And who live differently in a world. Like not everyone should be the same. So I think that if you're having, to anyone who's listening who feels like they have those days where they're just so frustrated with themselves and they don't want to have that kind of brain anymore, I get it. Like I have those days too. And I had them long before I got an official diagnosis. Yeah. And I'll probably continue to have them. Just remind yourself that you experience extremes of like positives and negatives. And the positives you have are very often out of reach for people who don't have your particular neurodivergence. And that's something really unique and special too. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. So if you want to, you don't have to, but we always share what the most ADHD thing we've done this week is. Most ADHD, if you would like to share, but you don't have to, obviously.
No, I can. I'm not ashamed of anything. Oh no, that's not true. I'm ashamed of
bold statement.
I'm ashamed of lots of things, but there's no topic that I think like is a closed book. The most ADHD thing I've done this week. God, it's so hard to choose. This might not be ADHD or not, but today's like a public holiday in Australia for the Queen's birthday. Oh. And my son was with his dad last night and I woke up this morning to like banging on the door. I knew that today was like a school holiday, but I guess forgot that like it was a school holiday. And so luckily I was home because I might have stayed at a friend's house, and that could have been the most ADHD thing I'd done, was just totally forget that I needed to be home to be with my son because he wasn't at school. But again, like, that's where I'm trying to like peel those things back between, like, is that ADHD or is that just me being forgetful? You know, like, I think it's possible for me to be forgetful and it not be
100%
a direct symptom of my ADHD.
Neurotypicals forget things too, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we just really, really want to say thank you so much, Clementine, for talking to us, for giving up your time.
Yeah, no, we really appreciate it. And yeah, it's been amazing talking to you.
And we know your words are really going to resonate with the listeners so much. So thank you.
Thank you both. It was so nice to be asked. I do have a little bit of that kind of imposter syndrome that's so common to us all, because I want to talk about it. I'm really excited. Like, it's something, I announced it, but it was like a few months in the process. So I feel like I've already, it wasn't like someone just told me last week you've got ADHD and I hadn't thought about it at all. But you still feel that imposter syndrome that people are going to be like, well, I don't know, you kind of feel like, well, what's the like official time frame before I'm allowed to kind of be a seasoned ADHD? And I think that's another thing that's really important just to leave with listeners, is that regardless of how late your diagnosis comes, I've had ADHD for 40 years.
Yes.
You know, I haven't had it for a week.
So true. Well, we hope you have a lovely evening, afternoon, whatever time it is.
It's evening now. I hope you guys have a great day. Good start.
Thank you.
And thank you so much. And you're doing amazing work. Like, I bet, you must just be changing the lives of so many people because you're speaking so openly about it. So thank you.
Oh, that's so kind of you, Dave.
So
because
lovely.
We're really like, emotional dysregulation rates high. So like, it's like this far away from crying at any moment.
Yeah.
So.
We could be caught in a feedback loop now of just telling each other over and over how amazing we are. And then eventually we're going to stop.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I'll be the one to end it then, and I'll say thank you. Have a great day. Best of luck to everyone listening. You're all doing an amazing job. Don't forget it. Wonderful. Be kind to yourselves.
Amazing.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
So that was Clementine Ford.
Actual Clementine, actual Ford, actually speaking to us.
Yeah, I still can't get over it.
And it's just such a special episode. I'm telling you, I am going to carry that magic eye analogy around with me for life. Is proper pearls. That is incredible insight that she gave us all. So thank you so much, Clementine.
Yeah, there was just so much in there, and we really didn't want to cut anything out because everything that she said just had so much importance. And things that we don't know about, and motherhood, and all sorts of things that she really gave us so much. Like, why would us pair of Wally's witter on to cut out some of Clementine? Just doesn't make sense. Exactly. So yeah, we might have missed our usual outros, and we've not done our differences or the most ADHD thing that we've done this week, but we will be back as normal with that next week. And as always, we appreciate you listening, and please like, rate, subscribe, buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/ADHDS females.
Share us to anyone who would benefit from hearing our podcast, and to any like ADHD groups. We would really appreciate that because we can't self-promote. And we would love a donation. If you've taken anything of this episode away, which we definitely have, then we'd really, really appreciate the support. So yes, please do buy us a coffee so that we can keep going.
Yes. And as always, keep sending us your messages and emails. Oh my goodness, I'm so broken.
ADHDfemales@gmail.com. It's all right. It's going to be payback next week when I have a secret garden party and I can't string a sentence together.
Okay. I think we should call it a day.
Yeah. You need to go to bed. Thanks for listening all.
Thank you. And as always, look after yourself. Be kind, compassionate to yourself and others. And we love you all.
See you on the other side.
Bye.
ADHDS females, ADHD AF, ADHDS females.